Well, it's been 27 years. It was the year of our Lord, 1994. It was the last year I was, well, shall I say, gainfully employed as an attorney and management analyst for the Department of Justice. And I was secretly in application for the seminary program for the Archdiocese of Louisville. Only a handful of people knew that I was considering leaving the department and becoming a priest. I was on a trip doing an evaluation of the U.S. Attorney's Office on the island of Guam, yes, Guam, halfway around the world for the first week of Lent. My friend Becky was on the trip with me, who was one of the handful of people who knew that I was considering entering into the seminary. There we were on Guam, and when Wednesday came, I went out for lunch. And I tried to remember the rules of Lent. You know, that you're supposed to abstain and fast and not eat meats. What the abstinence means, and you only eat that meal and you don't eat around or snack in between. I went into a McDonald's, and I remember it was crowded, lots of people, and there was the sign, 2 filet-o-fish for the price of 1. What a deal. They almost never offer something like that. So I immediately ordered that, 2 for the price of 1. And then the girl said, as they were trained in 1994, I think they still say it now, would you like to supersize that with French fries? Well, of course, why not? And so I had this enormous meal from McDonald's. I came back to the office where we were working, and I remember Becky saying she was refraining from eating because, well, it was Lent. And I said, well, I had lunch. I went to McDonald's and told her what I had. And she goes, I don't think that's the real spirit of Lent. And I thought, boy, I'm going to have a lot to learn about this new life I'm thinking of embracing. We decided that we would go to Mass that evening at the Ulon Cathedral in Guam, which was near the hotel where we were staying. And so we drove to Mass that evening. I still remember it. You have to know this about Guam. Guam has U.S. military personnel, local residents that live there. It's a U.S. territory. But the vast majority of people on any given day pre-pandemic on Guam are Japanese tourists. There are so many of them you can't even begin to count. We were in the mother of all traffic jams, which I'll candidly admit to you, even now as a priest, is the near occasion of sin for me. That in the parking lot at Kroger's at Goss Avenue, or any of those aisles into Kroger's. It's a place where my patience is going to be tested to the max. We were in this terrific traffic jam. I thought we were going to be late for church. That was a curse when I was a child. My parents never wanted us to be late for church. And I became angry in the middle of this traffic jam. And finally I turned to Becky and I looked at her and I said, you know, we dropped 2 atom bombs on that country and look what we got for it. Of course, that was a great laugh line, at least I thought. She was horrified. She goes, you're going to become a priest. And I went, well, I got a long way to go for Lent, don't I? The rest of the trip happened as it did. It came back home, but I really had to seriously begin to think, what is Lent really all about? I just knew it was about giving up something, and it was about, you know, obeying the rules, the fasting and the abstinence rules. And so I began to think about what should I, quote, give up? I made a decision on the long flight home that what I should do, because I'd become, well, a bit of a jerk at work, engaging in the national pastime of complaining, typically about supervisors and managers, the one I worked for and the other ones. Now, I wasn't the only one in this litany of people doing this, but most of the complaining would happen, storytelling would happen, and, well, you never let truth get in the way of a good story, right? So all those stories would become embellished and basically served no useful purpose. I decided this Lent I'm going to stop doing that. I'm not going to talk behind my boss's back or complain about this, that, or the other thing. I thought I was doing fairly well. We were about 3 weeks into Lent, and we had one of our staff meetings, and my boss, Brian, noticed that I'd been behaving oddly. I didn't know I was so transparent. He looked at me and he said, Padgett, I haven't heard a smart blank, you can fill that blank in, a smart blank remark from you in several weeks. What's going on? And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, Brian, I gave you up for Lent. I love to tell the story, but you know, I still had so much to learn about Lent. The opportunity tonight isn't just simply to observe some rules, although they are there. Those outward observances of our fasting and abstinence communicate to the world the general principles of our faith. That's the real purpose of it. When we fast, We express some solidarity with those who fast from food on a daily basis and against their choice. And we're also reminded that we waste so much that we should not do, and we're so extravagant sometimes with our eating that fasting is a great reminder of that. The abstinence from meat has lost some of its cultural value in modern times, but in the ancient times, meat was such a luxury that to abstain from it was really indicating that you were giving up something of prominence. But we do it as a universal sign on the Fridays of Lent. It's also the whole reason for our fish fries, which I'll be advertising at the end of Mass this evening. But those outward signs are important. Even that cross of ashes that we will not get tonight, that we ordinarily get, that seems to contradict the gospel that says, don't show anybody that you've just been to church. You know, ashes are like the I voted sticker that they stick on you when you go to the voting booth. But that's not its purpose, and I'm sure you know that as well. That the outward sign is actually reminding ourselves of the gift of our baptism, and that our baptism began our long journey towards heaven. Lent is about revisiting that journey, because you see what's going to happen at Easter now. Pandemic, heaven only knows, with the restrictions and the different things, but nevertheless, at Easter, the new water is blessed. It can at least be sprinkled on you. We think we can do at least that much this year at Easter, and we're reminded of our baptism. Not just simply to get wet, not because it's a tradition of what we do at Easter. We're reminded that the cleansing power comes from God and no other place. Lent is about a journey of that place where you and I can be made clean, but first of all, we have to recognize that we need to be made clean. You see, the purpose of Lent is actually to look inside, as I mentioned at the beginning of the liturgy. That's something I was trying to do on the island of Guam 27 years ago and not doing a terribly good job of it. I don't know if I'm doing that much better a job of it 27 years later, but I do try each year, and I'm sure you do as well. That the idea is there something about me that needs to change? When I was much younger, I thought Lent was an endurance contest. See if you can give up candy for 40 days. Or one year I tried to give up cussing. Don't try that if you have a sewer mouth like I do. It's really difficult. One of our priests actually puts $1 in the rice bowl for each time he cusses. Then he has the world's biggest rationalization. People are starving, so at least I'm paying for that with my cursing. That's not really quite the way for us to do that. I've done the same thing with rice bowl myself. But the idea isn't to see if we can do something for 40 days. I thought I could be fairly nice about my boss and quit doing all that not really healthy talking at work that happens in almost every American workplace. But for 40 days, for heaven's sake, surely at Easter I could start doing that again. Who wants to live like that? Can you imagine? You know, that was the whole idea, is that we look inside ourselves and see what in my heart must change to make me a better disciple of Jesus Christ. Ooh, that gets serious when you look at it that way. What in my heart must change? I can only speak from my own experience. I'm pretty good at looking around people who I'm critical of and seeing what they need to do to change to suit me, which, by the way, won't work because I'll think of something else if they fix that particular thing. They might as well stay on the one thing I don't like. That way we kind of understand where we're at in that relationship. But it's not about everything else changing to suit ourselves. It's really about looking at our own self and recognizing everyone, each person needs to change, but only we can be the agent of our change. That's why Lent is an interior season. It's an opportunity to look into your heart. And I think for Catholics, the best way to do that is to try to go to confession once, even if you've not been in a very long time, in Lent. One-on-one confession is a place described in the gospel, the secret place where we can look into our heart, where we can actually speak freely. I've heard confessions now for almost 22 years. I've been a priest, and I almost never hear somebody rationalize their sin in confession. They're just rather straightforward. Bless me, Father, for I've sinned. They list all those things. I went to confession a few days ago. The very same thing when I was the penitent going to confession. What's the point of rationalizing? You're supposed to say you did something wrong. It's really liberating and freeing to be able to speak your truth and to have that be met with the forgiveness and mercy of God. Every instance in confession leads inevitably to the announcement that our sins have been forgiven and we've been washed clean, like the leper last Sunday, washed clean like the waters of baptism do for every one of us, washed clean as we'll regenerate with the Easter water at the end of Holy Week. That confession does that very same thing, that no matter how upset we are with ourselves, no matter how poor we think our progress is, no matter what struggle we have, it's not like God is not fully aware that we had these struggles. This became a little more clear for me when I was asked to participate in a vocation discernment thing a week ago Sunday with men who are considering being a priest. I thought they wouldn't trust people that are waiting to sign on the dotted line with my vocation story, but they wanted me to tell it, and so I really did tell it. But it really kind of makes that point as I've really thought through, and that's what made me think of the events of 1994 when I was in their shoes thinking about what it was that I was going to do. The value of all of that looking inside is that we begin to recognize that this is where the entirety of our project will be. And it can't be that we're going to reach the finish line in 40 days. We will suddenly be a saint. Last time I checked, the only way you can be a saint is to die, and the last time I checked, every one of us is still alive, and we've got more living to do. So that can't be our objective. Our objective is to become more like Jesus Christ, so that at the very end, the offer of our sainthood won't be the shock of our lives, but will be the culmination of our journey. Perfection is not our goal. Therefore, choosing something in Lent that is difficult is the best choice you can make. I have people that will tell me, I'm having a lousy Lent because I failed this many times trying to do X. And I said, you sound like you're having a wonderful Lent. The whole idea of it, you've done any exercise and any training back when I was doing that, the whole point was to train to muscle failure. I always argued with that with my personal trainer. I wanted to do all the reps. I didn't want to fail. The whole point is to fail. You have to reach a point where your muscles fail. That's the whole idea of it. That's how the muscles get better. And so the same is true with our spiritual life. We have to be willing to fail and not take the failure as a sign that we're weak or a sign that we're a bad person or a sign that, well, we're just simply a failure, but rather a sign that we're human and that humans fail. And that God meets our failings, no matter how severe or slight they are, with His absolutely perfect mercy. A lesson we can most excellently learn in one-on-one confession, and in a different way we learn as we gather as we do tonight for Eucharist. So tonight the journey begins for each and every one of us. Even this priest of 22 years has things to work on. I'd like to be a little more civil in the Kroger. Perhaps you'll see me in the Kroger and can challenge me if I'm uncivil, which I can be at the drop of a hat when I'm in there. But I know that's something that I have to continue to work on, and I urge you to do the very same thing. To welcome the failure as the challenge to continue the effort to become holy, and to allow yourselves to know that it is God's redeeming grace that makes us holy, not our efforts, not our works. If we're willing to do that, take the risk of failure and experience failure, we will truly have a blessed Lent.